Let's mark down this show, Mr. Producer, for the Radio Hall of Fame, even before I started. Let's put a marker down. I'm going to say something that at some point will be regurgitated by the backbenchers in TV and radio, but that's not the point. We're on the precipice of another grave constitutional crisis. Joe Biden is not going to leave office, perhaps, without putting another nail in our Constitution. They've told you what they wanted to do, how they want to destroy the independence of the courts and violate separation of powers, a horrendous threat against our republic. They made it clear that they want to change our federal voting system in a way that they can never lose and we can never win. It's called eliminating the Electoral College. A grave threat. They made it clear that they want to add the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico as two states. Not because they care about Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. They care about getting 4 more Democrat senators so the Republicans can never win a majority again in the United States Senate. They've attacked the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, and the free exercise of religion. It's okay to go into the streets and advocate for Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. But whatever you do, do not peacefully assemble and protest, even silently, in front of an abortion clinic. That will send you to prison. That's the record. Whatever you do, if you're a parent, don't speak out of line and don't speak too loudly at a school board meeting unless you want to knock on the door by the FBI. That's the current situation. Don't post information on social media or speak out in a way that dares to challenge the so-called science, which isn't even science, spewed by a Democrat Party administration and Democrat governors who use the occasion of a horrendous virus to use the iron fist of tyranny on their citizens. It's a long list. First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth, the Eighth, the Ninth, the 10th, the 14th, separation of powers, the abuse of the justice system in ways we've never seen before against a former president who's running for president again. We've never seen anything like this. It should cause you to shiver in concern and fear. We had this election where the people said, that's enough. We don't want any more of this. Now we hear talk of something as if we're talking about French fries or we're talking about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's no big deal. And what is it? They've given it a name called preemptive pardons or prospective pardons. I've been working and studying the Constitution since I was 13 years old. It's my area of expertise. I've written about it. I've talked about it. I've litigated about it. I've never heard these phrases, preemptive pardons or prospective pardons. Oh, sure, I know that Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon for any potential future charges. I think we can all admit that was an extraordinarily unique and rare situation where a president resigns. And not before and not since has there been a general use of quote-unquote preventive pardons or prospective pardons. Really made-up phrases from an administration, a party, an ideology that makes up phrases and words all the time. The phrase preemptive pardons or prospective pardons corrupts the language as it corrupts the law. For example, imagine the following. A president pardons himself, not just for past or present federal offenses or possible federal offenses, but for any and all possible future offenses. Then the president he's effectively immunized himself from all criminal exposure of any kind, including after they leave office. I thought the Biden regime and the Democrats, their media and their academics were very upset that the Supreme Court ruled in a very cautious and limited way that a president has limited immunity relating to his or her official acts, not for purely personal acts. But what is being discussed by the Biden regime right now is the possibility that the president could indeed, with his own signature, immunize himself or herself from all federal offenses into the future, including when he's no longer president. Wow. I think they owe a big apology to the members of the Supreme Court who ruled correctly. Or imagine a president handing out such pardons for all his family members, his friends, administration officials, donors, and or political allies and party members. What then? Now look, I'm not big on another impeachment spectacle. The Constitution gives us few tools to deal with a openly anti-Constitution, anti-American regime backed by a political party. But let me be clear. Let me put the marker down, chisel this down. If Joe Biden creates a precedent of the kind that is being discussed by his staff, his party, and others in the media about preemptive pardons or prospective pardons, that creates a precedent of this sort, a precedent that will utterly destroy the nature of this republic, like so much of what the Democrat Party and Biden want to do, then we have no choice. You might recall the second impeachment against Donald Trump occurred on the Senate side, the so-called trial, when he had already left office. The purpose of this impeachment would not be able to remove him from office because the Senate Democrats give their allegiance to their party and their leaders, not to the country. This has become unequivocally clear. The reason for impeachment would be to make it abundantly clear that there are people in Congress, in the House and the Senate, there are people from one end of this country to the other. There are people who want a voice and want steps taken to confront what could be the most egregious assault on our constitutional system yet. From a party, a regime, a president that hates the people who wrote the Constitution, who adopted it, who ratified it, and those of us who seek to actually enforce it. I tried to explain the other night. This election was not about the middle class versus the elites, and I'm so sick of the Marxist pablum, the class structure of the debate. This election was about those of us who support America and those who do not. This election was about those of us who support liberty and those who do not. This election was about those of us who support the Constitution and those who do not. That's why everything was at stake. Not because of the middle/working class versus the elites. It's because of the Washington power establishment that is trying to devour what's left of this republic. That's what this election was about. Not class warfare, not Marxist pablum. Patriots, whatever their background, whatever their income, whatever their color, whatever their faith, standing up and saying no to what they were doing to Donald Trump and our judicial system. Saying no to the destruction of American citizenry, our culture, and assimilation with an open border. Saying no. We're not economic socialists. We are economic market capitalists. This election was about big things, substantive things, huge principles of Western civilization and humanity versus the rest. Joe Biden pardoned his son, like I told you he would, in September 2023. He pardoned his son because of the crimes that he committed and that he might be held accountable for after he leaves office. Like a mobster, he took action to protect himself, his family too. But the main reason to protect himself, as I told you over a year ago, while others were debating the niceties of what a federal judge did in Wilmington. And I pointed out to you, and none of it matters. He's going to pardon his son to pardon himself. And now I am ringing the bells, banging the pots and pans, and I am telling you right now that if Joe Biden entertains preventive pardons and prospective pardons in a systemic manner, in a way that this country has never experienced before, that there must be pushback other than our rubbing our hands together. Even if the impeachment clause cannot be exercised to the point of removing him before he's forced to leave office, it is the process that should be triggered to make it abundantly clear that what he is doing is a high crime. What he is doing is an attack on the civil society. What he's doing is an attack on Republican government. And it must not be tolerated. And for those who are out there saying, well, you know, he ought to just pardon Donald Trump, they give him cover when Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong, are making a huge mistake. Donald Trump doesn't need a pardon from Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the mobster. The mobster shouldn't issue a pardon for what the mobster did to Donald Trump. Let me just be clear. If the Biden regime just picks 20 of its favorite putative victims because the Trump administration said they're going to go after people and so forth and so on, what would stop them? What would the test be? What would the rule be on the number of preemptive pardons that he could give out? There's nothing in the Constitution that creates such barriers. The pardon power is as general as it gets. I suppose it could go to the Supreme Court with the Supreme Court Act, maybe. But the Supreme Court would have to create some kind of test or rationale, because not one currently exists in law. You see, there's an expectation that if you become president of the United States, there has to be some level of virtue, some level of prudence. But when a man like Joe Biden, who has always been a psychopath, a serial liar, who's angry, who believes he should have been nominated by his party at the convention to run again, who believes that he would be president again but for, who knows nothing about government power, on exercising government power against the private sector and individuals, citizens. That's all he's done his whole life. Who has skated, despite the fact that millions of dollars are poured into his family and him. He's never been held to account for anything. Logical next step. What's to stop him? You actually have party members, his own party, Hakeem Jeffries, Democrats galore, Clyburn, others urging him, pressing him, issue more pardons. It's in the media. Check it out. Issue more pardons, Joe. Issue more pardons. Protect more people, Joe. Protect more people. Because the Democrat Party, as an institution, hates America. Not all the Democrat rank and file, I say this again and again. The party, the structure, the apparatchiks, the leadership, they hate the country. It's all about monopoly power for the Democrat Party. That's what it is. And if they feel they need to do this, and then, of course, blame Donald Trump or blame Kash Patel or blame the man on the moon, it doesn't much matter. No accountability, responsibility to themselves, and that's what they'll do. And they'll forever destroy the country, election or no election.